She married the perfect man until a sealed file, a whispered name, and a silent scream revealed he had loved and buried others before her. Now, it's not just about love. It's about survival. The day I met Evan Thorne, I didn't believe in fate. Not the kind written in stars or carved into the edges of a wedding ring. But he was there, wearing that disarming grin and the scent of cedarwood, as if he'd walked straight out of a movie and into my life. We were both reaching for the same black umbrella at a sidewalk vendor stall in downtown Chicago. I had just gotten out of a board meeting, rain pouring so hard it felt like the city wanted to wash me away. He offered it to me first and said, "Rain looks better on you than me." I smiled, I thanked him, and I didn't expect to see him again. But he showed up again the next day, waiting with 2 coffees outside my office. That was Evan, charming, persistent, the kind of man who made you feel like you'd been missing something your whole life until he handed it to you in a paper cup with your name spelled correctly. 3 months later, he proposed in front of the old carousel in Lincoln Park, right where I told him my mother used to take me as a child. He got down on one knee, ring in hand, crowd watching. I said yes. Of course I did. He knew me like no one else ever had. Or so I thought. The wedding was set for October. A golden fall ceremony in a lakeside villa with glass walls and hand-stitched silk tablecloths. My dress, my mother's vintage veil, a cake that took 3 tastings to finalize. Everything was perfect until the whispers started. It began with a missed call from block number. I ignored it. Then came the package, an unmarked brown envelope left at the front desk of my apartment building. Inside was a photo of Evan. He was standing outside a car, didn't recognize, handing something to a man in a dark hoodie. No date, no note, no explanation. I showed it to Evan that night. He didn't flinch. He laughed and said it looked like a bad tabloid photo. Claimed he was probably helping a stranger with directions. I wanted to believe him. I had to. Love, when deep enough, has a way of silencing the alarms in your mind. But then my friend Tessa, sharp, protective, always skeptical, called me in the middle of the night, her voice low and trembling. She asked if I was alone. I was. She asked if I trusted Evan. I paused. She said she couldn't tell me everything over the phone, but she'd found something. Something buried. Something dangerous. She never made it to our meeting. The next morning, she was found unconscious in her car, parked near the riverbank. Police said it looked like an overdose. Tessa didn't use it. She had just passed a medical exam for an overseas fellowship. I sat beside her in the hospital, clutching her cold hand, begging her to wake up. That night, I started looking into Evan's past myself. His LinkedIn was polished. His social media sparse. His job history checked out, on paper. But I noticed a small detail in an old photo posted by one of his cousins from years ago. Evan at a beach house, smiling with a different woman. She looked familiar. Too familiar. I found her obituary 2 hours later. Her name was Mia Delacroix. Died 3 years ago. No foul play, no investigation. Just a tragic accident during a boating trip. No family quoted, no friends interviewed. Just a short, clinical write-up. She was listed as Evan's fiancée. My chest tightened. My breath caught in my throat. I had never heard her name. He'd never mentioned her. I dug deeper. The boating trip had taken place on Lake Ontario, the same place Evan had booked our honeymoon. My hands shook as I slammed the laptop shut. A part of me wanted to call the police. But what would I say? That my fiancé was too perfect? That a photo and an obituary felt like a ghost tapping at the door? So I stayed silent. Days passed. The wedding drew closer. Evan was radiant, attentive, affectionate. Every time he looked at me, it felt like he was trying to memorize my face. Every kiss felt like a goodbye. The night before the wedding, my father pulled me aside. He handed me a folded note. Said someone had slipped it under his hotel room door. It was typed. No signature. Ask Evan about Ashgrove. Ask before you say I do. Ashgrove. I didn't know what it meant. But Evan did. When I confronted him, he didn't deny knowing the name. He said Ashgrove was the rehab center his mother had stayed in before she died. That was a painful chapter he didn't want to relive. He cried. He told me I could walk away if I didn't trust him. I didn't walk away. I stood with him under the lanterns, beneath an arch of yellow roses, with everyone I loved watching. I said the vows. I kissed him. And when we danced that night, he whispered in my ear that I'd made the right choice. But I saw the glint in his eyes, and I knew the real story hadn't even started yet. The morning after the wedding, I woke up with Evan's arm around me and a hollow pit in my chest. The world outside our honeymoon suite looked peaceful. Birds danced above the waves, and the sun painted golden trails across the lake. But peace was an illusion. My thoughts were loud. The name Ashgrove rang in my head like a silent scream. I excused myself to the balcony. My phone buzzed with a voicemail. Unknown number. I hesitated, then pressed play. It was Tessa. The message was shaky, whispered. She said she'd found the Ashgrove file in an old legal database, buried under sealed court records. She said it wasn't a rehab center. It was a private mental institution, one that catered to high-profile clients. She told me Evan had stayed there under a different name. The call cut off before she could say more. I stared into the lake. It shimmered like glass, but I felt the cold truth rising beneath the surface. When I turned around, Evan was standing behind me, holding 2 cups of coffee, smiling the same way he had on the first day. He looked at me like I was his salvation, or maybe his next mistake. I smiled back. That day, we visited a winery, toured a lighthouse, took photos on the edge of the cliffs where the wind felt like fingers pulling at your clothes. Evan held me tightly. He said this was the happiest he'd ever been. I said nothing. Inside me, something had begun to burn. Slow, silent, unstoppable. That night, while he slept, I searched his bag. There was nothing unusual. A watch, his wallet, travel-sized cologne. Then I saw the notebook. Small, leather-bound, unlabeled. I opened it. The pages weren't filled with writing. They were filled with names. Dates. Red check marks. Some were crossed out completely. Others circled. Mia Delacroix was there. So was another woman named Kara Elwell. I didn't recognize the third name. Then I saw mine. Liana Mercer. Circled twice. I couldn't breathe. I sat on a bathroom floor, staring at that notebook, each heartbeat louder than the last. These weren't girlfriends. They were projects. Patterns. Something darker than heartbreak. In the morning, I smiled like nothing was wrong. Kissed his cheek. Poured his coffee. I needed time. I needed proof. I needed to get off that property alive. I made an excuse to visit town alone. Claimed I wanted to surprise him with something special. He hesitated, then handed me the car keys. I drove straight to the local police station. But when I gave them Evan's name, the officer on duty nodded politely, then said they had no records, no flags, no criminal history. When I mentioned Mia's death, he leaned back, sighing. So it was ruled accidental. No investigation reopened. I left, colder than when I arrived. Back at the villa, Evan was waiting at the door. His smile was gone. He asked where I'd been. I lied. He said I was acting strange. I laughed. He watched me the entire night. Even in bed, he didn't fall asleep right away. He just lay there, eyes open, arms crossed beneath his head. The next day, I found out what Ashgrove really was. A retired psychiatrist named Dr. Warren Mitchell finally took my call. He used to work at the Ashgrove facility. When I mentioned Evan, he went silent. Then he asked how I knew that name. I told him who I was. He said Evan's real name was Elliot Vance. He was admitted to Ashgrove after a psychological breakdown related to delusional romantic fixation and pattern-driven obsession. 3 incidents. 3 women. None of them lived to file a complaint. All deaths ruled accidents. The last woman, Mia, was engaged to him when she drowned during a midnight swim. She had been planning to leave him. Her friends suspected foul play, but had no evidence. The psychiatrist warned Ashgrove to extend supervision, but Evan, or Elliot, was released after 6 months under court order. With a sealed record, I felt my legs weaken beneath me. My hands trembled. Dr. Mitchell's voice was calm. He told me to leave. That people like Evan didn't forgive easily. That he only loved when he had control. I didn't go back to the villa. I checked into a hotel under a fake name. I turned off my phone, sat on the bed with a notebook clutched to my chest. But Evan found me. He knocked on the door softly, called my name like a prayer. Said he wasn't mad, just disappointed, that I had broken our trust. I froze. He slipped a note under the door. It read, "You shouldn't run. You're too smart to end up like the others." I packed a bag and left through the back entrance. Went to the only person I could trust. My estranged brother, Mason, a security consultant who hadn't spoken to me since our mother's funeral. He opened the door in disbelief, took one look at me, and knew something was wrong. I told him everything. Mason didn't question it. He ran background checks, found the sealed record, matched the name Elliot Vance to Evan Thorne through a utility bill that had once slipped through the cracks. We had enough to take to the press, to the police, to someone. That night, Mason's apartment was broken into. No valuables taken. Just our computers. Our notes. The notebook. Evan was wiping me clean. I wanted to run again, but Mason said no. He said we'd end this. That predators like Evan didn't stop until someone stopped them. We set a trap. I agreed to meet Evan at the lake where we'd honeymooned. Told him I wanted to apologize. Told him I missed him. I wore the dress he loved. I smiled. I kissed him when I saw him. He believed me. We walked down the pier. He held my hand tightly. Said we could start over. Said no one would ever love me like he did. I agreed. Then I stepped back. And Mason came from the shadows with 2 off-duty cops and a recording device playing Evan's own words from our last call. Evan froze. He tried to run. He failed. They arrested him at dawn. Not for murder. Not yet. But for identity fraud, psychiatric concealment, and stalking across state lines. Enough to hold him. Enough to start. The press devoured the story. Mia Delacroix's case was reopened. Tessa woke up. Evan's name, Elliot Vance, hit national news. And I stood on the edge of that same lake again. No veil. No lies. No ring. Not a widow. Not a bride. Just a woman who refused to be the next name in a leather notebook.